Good morning, baby. How are you?
I am well, and yourself?
Very good. Thank you so much for asking. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you thus far, and was super excited to finally meet you face to face. We've been emailing a little bit about some opportunities that we have at Ronstad. Your skill set and experience is extremely strong, so you would be considered one of our most placeable candidates based on your experience and your skill set. So, I'd like to just hear a little bit in your own words about some of your past experience. So I understand that were an executive assistant with Advent Health. It looks like it was a little over 2 years for that position, and you were working with C-suites and executives and regional directors. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that position, please?
In that position, I initially came on as a receptionist, and quickly I transitioned into AEA due to the demand at the time. The C suite executives particularly needed support in areas for the conversions that the hospital was doing. There were policy changes. We were merging the regions. We were also moving from one building to another, particularly from one county, so from Seminole County to Orange County. And the daily task just consisted of course, meeting coordinations, document transfers, also coordinating with the doctors and their downline. I also was responsible for timesheet submittals and approvals. Also, the regional marketing materials and conference materials for the meetings. Um, Also, event planning. The list, I feel like, for executive assistants, it's not a set job. You really just have to be wide open to anything that comes about, and it really just
Sure.
takes on tasks that the executives don't have time for.
Hmm.
While they're sitting in the meeting, you just got to be their eyes, their ears, and typically their arms. Because they can't do everything. And so that's what my days really consisted of, taking care of the
Okay.
things that they weren't able to take care of because they're typically in meetings all day. So,
Okay. And you were also managing a calendar. Was it for multiple executives?
yes,
Okay.
at any given time, I was managing also their inboxes and outboxes, so emails and calendars for upwards of 8 executives and directors at a single
Wow.
time. It just really depended on the demand and what the region had coming up as far as events and conferences, as well as who they were hiring, as far as doctors, as we were discussing earlier. With the COVID stretch, it was a high demand for doctors and nurses, and so with that, it just put a lot of responsibility in my hands as to making sure my executives and directors were covered.
Lots of logistics, I'm sure.
Yeah, tons of logistics.
Were you handling travel for anyone? Was anybody coming in or out of the state?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
The
So
ma-
you were doing scheduling, travel arrangements, logistical coordination. I know that I've actually worked with lots of admins and executive admins from Advent, and they, do meetings and events and with things with
Expense.
your
Yeah.
expenses. Yes, absolutely. Um, so when you were doing events and meetings, I know it was during COVID, so it's probably a little bit more unique. But can you tell me about a time where you successfully managed either an event or like a travel plans?
Yes. So my I would say my I don't know how would you put it, but like how I would succeed in coordinating the doctors and the executives is they all individually had admins as well. So I would make it a point to touch bases with other admins and other departments on a weekly basis. Even though that wasn't required, it was important that I knew and the other admins knew what was coming up for the executives that I was supporting. So
Okay.
being that I would get that jump start, I would know how to coordinate and who the executives needed to meet with and who was priority and what was priority. Um, so that was my advantage, just connecting with those admins ahead of time in order to just lay a foundation as to what is to come or what is ahead. So
Yeah, very important to be able to coordinate with all the other departments to make sure everything runs super smooth. I completely can appreciate that task.
yeah.
And so we talked a little bit about COVID, how between 2020 and 2023, it seems like it's starting to get back up to speed. But I understand that there were some changes going on with Advent globally, and I know this from other candidates as well. So why don't you tell me about why that position ended in January?
Specifically, again, during COVID, with the merge, the company decided to downsize in some areas. With there being two regions, there was two sets of executives, so two CEOs, two VPs, two CCOs. And so at that time, they made the decision to merge, and in that mean it went to one CEO, one VP, one CEO. So with that displacement for my region, which was the South region, um, that's how I transitioned into my other position.
Okay,
um, just it was just a natural transition, not just for me but my entire team.
sure. And then let's see here. So the big transition happened at Advent. So then that had you looking for another opportunity. And then I see that you accepted a position with Ecolab, also great
Yes.
company. Great standards with that company. So tell me a little bit about what you were doing with Ecolab. Were you focusing on any type of admin duties, or was it a different type of role?
No, essentially, the name or the title is fancy, but my work is always administration based or
Okay.
assistant. I just dealt particularly, it went from dealing with the C suite of a company to dealing with clients at Ecolab. So essentially the same thing: invoicing, expensing, bill collecting, notifying the client as to what was projected for payments that were coming up, as well as scheduling the inbound and outbound of the merchandise that they needed for their businesses. So really, again, just managing their files, and calling to touch bases with the client. So essentially the same kind of work, just a different or fancy title, so to speak.
Sure. And then I understand most recently you were working a temporary assignment with another staffing agency for SeaWorld. And
Yes.
that was in HR capacity. Were you doing like talent acquisitions?
Yes, onboarding and offboarding, particularly for not just SeaWorld, but also their sister companies, like Sesame Street, Discovery Cove, and that was nationwide. So I was responsible for supporting the HR director, and her downline at the time was sourcing talent for all of those theme parks, and
Okay.
I support her in that. So.
Okay. And that was a temporary assignment. I understand, we work with some of the various theme parks that they ramp up during certain periods of time and they bring on temp help during their busy seasons to make sure they're staffed. So, when that position ended, were you doing it to ramp up for their busy season?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly what it was for. Yes.
Okay. And so now that that position has ended, you are seeking another opportunity. Some of the positions that we were chatting about are admin based. So tell me a little bit about this. Will be our one of our last questions here. What draws you to that type of position? Where what do you think your skills are that you have that make you a good admin assistant?
So, particularly my life's work, I feel like is based in administration. So, I have this thing where I call it I work to serve others. I like to be in a role that supports the goals and achievements and tasks of others. So that's why I am seeking another admin role because I feel like I thrive in that role. And essentially, even though my title changes or the industry changes that I've worked in, it's always administration based. So I feel like that is my niche. It's
Hmm.
fulfilling. Um, I've worked other jobs, but it always just takes me back to administration.
Okay.
Um, so
Yeah, I think that that's a very interesting point that you say. Our company, Ronstad, we used to have a division called office professionals where we were hiring professionals that worked in offices, and we've changed that recently this year. We are now business professionals because I feel like everything really does come back to that you're a business professional and you're working in the business world, and a lot of that has to do with admin, even in recruiting, talent acquisition, onboarding. You're still doing recruiting, you just have different clients basically. An admin position, you're supporting someone internally. Recruiting, you are supporting clients and you're supporting talent. So I
right.
think it all definitely flows very nicely throughout. So I feel like I said at the beginning of the call, that you are a very placeable candidate. You could definitely do something in the admin field. You could even go into the human resources or talent acquisition field. I feel like they're all incredibly transferable. Well, Bebe, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this part of the interview, but don't go anywhere because we have a few more things to chat about. Thank you.